knowledge-based solutions inspired by the principles of Islamic economics and finance. At ISDBI, we lead the transformation of the global Islamic finance sector. Through our grants program, we empower countries and institutions to create dynamic Islamic finance ecosystems. We synergize knowledge technologies with Islamic finance to create problem-solving innovations, gaining 3 fintech patents for blockchain-based solutions. Our capacity-building programs aim to nurture the next generation of knowledge leaders and entrepreneurs. With over 800 training courses delivered, we are among the largest contributors to human capital development in Islamic economics, banking and finance. And our pioneering open online courses have pushed the frontiers of knowledge in the field, benefiting thousands of participants across the globe. The ISDB Institute has been a leader in Islamic economics and finance publishing, with more than 500 publications available for download on our newly designed ebook reader app. A modern application that serves as an accessible gateway to our publications, including books, flagship reports, research articles, and more. We manage the ISDB Prize for Impactful Achievement in Islamic Economics, a world-class award that rewards outstanding achievements in knowledge creation and development solutions. Our achievements have been widely recognized by the global Islamic finance industry. We are guided by a unique leadership that inspires our direction. With a diverse range of unique perspectives and expertise. Our dedicated management team strives to enhance productivity, efficiency, and creativity. Together with our partners, we power sustainable economic progress and social prosperity in our member countries. In doing so, we contribute to a brighter future for generations to come around the world. The Islamic Development Bank Institute, ISDBI, is the knowledge beacon of the ISDB Group, leading the exploration of innovative solutions for the sustainable development of our member countries and communities. We turn insights into actions and create value through knowledge-based solutions inspired by the principles of Islamic economics and finance. At ISDBI, we lead the transformation of the global Islamic finance sector. Through our grants program, we empower countries and institutions to create dynamic Islamic finance ecosystems. We synergize knowledge technologies with Islamic finance to create problem-solving innovations, gaining 3 fintech patents for blockchain-based solutions. Our capacity-building programs aim to nurture the next generation of knowledge leaders and entrepreneurs. With over 800 courses delivered, we are among the largest contributors to human capital development in Islamic economics, banking and finance. And our pioneering open online courses have pushed the frontiers of knowledge in the field, benefiting thousands of participants across the globe. The ISDB Institute has been a leader in Islamic economics and finance publishing, with more than 500 publications available for download on our newly designed ebook reader app. A modern application that serves as an accessible gateway to our publications, including books, flagship reports, research articles, and more. We manage the ISDB Prize for Impactful Achievement in Islamic Economics, a world-class award that rewards outstanding achievements in knowledge creation and development solutions. Our achievements have been widely recognized by the global Islamic finance industry. We are guided by a unique leadership that inspires our direction. With a diverse range of unique perspectives and expertise. Our dedicated management team strives to enhance productivity, efficiency, and creativity. Together with our partners, we power sustainable economic progress and social prosperity in our member countries. In doing so, we contribute to a brighter future for generations to come around the world. The Islamic Development Bank Institute, ISDBI, is the knowledge beacon of the ISDB Group, leading the exploration of innovative solutions for the sustainable development of our member countries and communities. We turn insights into actions and create value through knowledge-based solutions inspired by the principles of Islamic economics and finance. At ISDBI, we lead the transformation of the global Islamic finance sector. Through our grants program, we empower countries and institutions to create dynamic Islamic finance ecosystems. We synergize knowledge technologies with Islamic finance to create problem-solving innovations, gaining 3 fintech patents for blockchain-based solutions. Our capacity-building programs aim to nurture the next generation of knowledge leaders and entrepreneurs. With over 800 training courses delivered, we are among the largest contributors to human capital development in Islamic economics, banking, and finance.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. It's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to the 20th ISDB Global Forum on Islamic Finance, held as a part of the 2026 Islamic Development Bank Group annual meetings here in Baku, Azerbaijan. Before we begin our session, I would like to invite you to listen to a recitation from a Holy Quran.
قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون.
May wisdom and guidance of the Holy Quran inspire our discussions throughout of this day. This year's forum is convened under the topic, Achieving Sustainable Prosperity through Islamic Finance. For 2 decades, this forum has served as a leading platform for dialogue among policymakers, regulators, development institutions, academics, and industry players to explore how Islamic finance can contribute to the development of Islamic finance, to the economic resilience and shared prosperity. Today's program will discuss some of the most important challenges and opportunities facing our member countries, including development traps, food and energy security, Islamic social finance innovation, and the growing role of technology and AI in advancing the Islamic finance industry. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to invite Dr. Sami Al-Suwaleim, Acting Director General of the Islamic Development Bank Institute, to deliver his welcoming remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah.
All praise belong to Allah.
Mr. Saleh Kazimov, Governor of the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, Your Excellency Engineer Adib Al-A'ma, Chief Executive Officer of the Islamic Trade Finance Corporation of the Islamic Development Bank Group, Excellencies, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are honored to welcome you to the 20th ISDB Global Forum on Islamic Finance. The global Islamic finance industry currently is estimated to be about $4 trillion. The size of the ISDB group, in contrast, is about 40 billion. So in terms of size, the group is only 0.1% of the global Islamic finance industry. But the impact of the group is far beyond its size. The ISDB group has been and continues to be the leader of the industry since it was established more than 50 years ago. This shows that the group leads not by quantity, but by quality. The vision, values, and principles that govern the group's vast programs are what distinguish its leadership. This is why innovation is critical for the success of our mission. At the ISDB Institute, we make innovation among our top priorities. As you can see from the annual report on our website and on our booth and the program of our forum today, our colleagues continuously work with stakeholders to explore innovative solutions to economic challenges facing our member countries through Islamic finance. I welcome you again and wish everyone a fruitful and productive forum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Sami, for your insightful remarks and setting the stage for today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my privilege to invite His Excellency Mr. Taleh Kazimov, Governor of the Central Bank of the Republic of Kazakhstan. As the host country of the ISDB Group annual meetings, Azerbaijan continues to play an increasingly important role in fostering regional connectivity, economic development, and innovation of the financial sector. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
I'm still governor for Central Bank of Azerbaijan, not Kazakhstan. I believe my friend Timur will not be jealous about that, but I'm still Central Bank Governor of Azerbaijan Republic. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely delighted to welcome you all in Baku, in the capital of Azerbaijan, for the 20th Forum of Islamic Development Bank Group. And as a region that has stood at the crossroads of civilizations and trade, we are honored to host this global platform. Historically, these crossroads served as the vital stabilizers for the global exchange. Today, that role is more critical than ever, as the global economy is undergoing deep structural shifts. Fragmentation in trade, coupled with rising uncertainty, creates an urgent need to build adaptive and inclusive financial systems. Islamic finance, with its principles emphasizing risk-sharing and ethical alignment, offers practical tools to contribute to the formation of such systems. From my personal opinion, success of Islamic finance in the country requires progress in the following two directions. And first of it is development of legal frameworks and ensuring clarity of regulation. And second is development of human capital to enable the operation of the Islamic finance framework in the country. We have already embarked on this journey, advancing reforms to enable Islamic financial instruments, including amendments to the Civil Code, the Tax Code, and financial legislation, ensuring neutral treatment between conventional and Islamic finance. Given the current readiness of the market participant, we decided to start with Islamic window and then monitor demand to decide on a full-scale launch. We are also actively utilizing our regulatory sandbox, and already we have two banks successfully testing their products, of course under the supervision of Central Bank of Azerbaijan, not Kazakhstan. Furthermore, we also have an ongoing project with Islamic Development Bank to establish an enabling environment for the introduction of sukuk in Azerbaijan. We expect the project to lead to a creation of a robust legal and regulatory framework, enhance financial institutions' capacity in Islamic finance, establish a monitoring and evaluation framework, and ultimately facilitate the issuance of Azerbaijan's first ever sukuk. By doing this, we will further diversify our financial sector. We are committed to embedding Islamic finance into our financial architecture, expecting our reforms to deepen financial markets and attract foreign investment. Islamic finance, acting as a unifying financial language across the regions, facilitates cross-border investment and private sector development. And Azerbaijan is ready to contribute to this vision, definitely. While developing financial sector, we must also identify what kind of economy we are financing. The Republic of Azerbaijan has integrated ESG factors in its national development strategy, and in this regard, Islamic finance aligns closely with our goals through its emphasis on real sector activity. Islamic finance fosters sustainable development by prioritizing social welfare and ethical investment, and of course, while avoiding speculation and debt bubbles. Therefore, a key priority for us is to enable the development of Islamic finance instruments that are also sustainability-driven, mobilizing capital for more resilient economies. The second direction, as I mentioned earlier, is development of human capital, both within the local financial institutions and through increasing the expertise of our supervisors, independent auditors, and, of course, other intermediaries. We are committed to supporting capacity building through organizing of seminars and workshops with our international partners, enabling the creation of well-functioning Islamic finance ecosystem. I would like to emphasize that the next phase will not be defined by isolated national efforts, but by collective actions. I sincerely believe that the most valuable outcome of this forum will be strengthening institutional cooperation across our jurisdictions, and today's event represents a renewed commitment to integrity and innovation in Islamic finance. As we mark the 20th forum of the Islamic Development Bank Group, we are also shaping the future of this ecosystem. Azerbaijan is committed to being the part of that future as a reformer and as a bridge between regions and markets. Geography shapes our circumstances, direction shapes our future. And we have a clear vision of where we are going and how we will get there. Our history has always been defined by our crossroads. Let our future be defined by the connection we build here today. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your inspiring remarks and for Azerbaijan's warm hospitality. Ladies and gentlemen, our next keynote speaker joins us on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank Group. Engineer Adib Yusuf Al-Amma is the Chief Executive Officer of the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, a member of IsDB Group. He brings more than 3 decades of leadership experience in international trade, economic cooperation, and strategic development initiatives. Please join me in welcoming.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Excellencies, distinguished guests, respected colleagues, sisters and brothers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is both an honor and a privilege to address you today at the 20th ISDB Group Forum on Islamic Finance, held in conjunction with the 2026 ISDB Group Annual Meeting here in the beautiful city of Baku, Azerbaijan. On behalf of the group, allow me to extend our sincere welcome to our honored guests at this important forum, which for the past 2 decades has served as a leading platform for advancing dialogue, collaboration, and innovation in Islamic finance. This year's theme, Achieving Sustainable Prosperity Through Islamic Finance, could not be more timely. Across many parts of the world, particularly in several of our member countries, we continue to witness increasingly complex development challenges, economic fragmentation, vulnerability to external shocks, food and energy insecurity, rising debt pressures, and persistent development traps and constrained inclusive, sustainable growth. Against this backdrop, ladies and gentlemen, Islamic finance must not be viewed merely as an alternative set of financial contracts, nor as a niche segment of the global financial industry. Rather, Islamic finance represents a value-driven development paradigm, one that seeks to reconnect finance with the real economic productivity activities, shared prosperity, social well-being. Its principles are rooted in fairness, risk-sharing, asset backing, ethical investment, and social solidarity. These principles are not only relevant to Islamic finance, they also speak to the wider global development agenda and to our shared responsibility to build more resilient, inclusiveness, and sustainable economies. Indeed, the broader development orientation resonates strongly with the ISDB Group new 10-year strategic framework for the years 2026 through 2035, which is anchored on the vision of originality and solidarity for intergenerational prosperity. The framework reaffirms that development cannot be reduced merely to financial growth or capital accumulation. Sustainable prosperity ultimately depends on strengthening productivity, resilience, human dignity, and inclusive participation in economic opportunity. It also emphasizes the importance of nationally driven development solutions, South-South cooperation, and development models rooted in the ethical foundations of Islamic economics and Islamic finance. From the perspective of the ISDB Group, therefore, the role of Islamic finance extends far beyond financial intermediation. It is fundamentally about enabling resilience, strengthening regional integration, mobilizing long-term development financing, and advancing more inclusive and equitable economic systems. At the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, we see this very clearly through the lens of trade and the lens of development. Trade remains one of the most powerful drivers of economic transformation, of job creation, food security, and regional connectivity. Yet, sustainable trade expansions requires financial ecosystems that are stable, inclusive, and developmental oriented. This is precisely where Islamic finance offers immense strategic relevance. Its foundational principles of risk sharing, asset backing, ethical finance, and social solidarity provide powerful instruments for supporting SMEs, investing in infrastructure, financing productive sectors, resilient supply chains, and cross-border trade and economic cooperation. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are also greatly encouraged by the growing momentum around the development of Islamic finance here in Azerbaijan. The launch of the report today on the prospects of Islamic finance in Azerbaijan during this forum represents an important milestone and reflects the country's growing interest in Islamic finance and its potential contribution to broader economic growth, sustainable prosperity, and Azerbaijan's strategic positioning within the wider Islamic finance landscape. In many respects, this aligns closely with the broader aspiration of the ISDB Group to strengthen regional integration, deepen intra-OIC cooperation, and enhance South-South economic connectivity as a pathway towards greater collective resilience and shared prosperity. We commend the efforts of the government of the Republic of Azerbaijan, the Central Bank of the Republic of Azerbaijan, thank you, Your Excellency, ISDB Group entities, including ISDBI, thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Suelem, and all stakeholders working towards building the foundation of a credible, resilient, and sustainable Islamic finance ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look ahead, the future of Islamic finance will ultimately deepen not only on its commercial expansion, but also on its ability to remain authentic to its developmental purposes. The central question before us is not simply how Islamic finance can grow, but rather how can Islamic finance contribute meaningfully towards overcoming developmental traps, strengthening resilience, accelerating regional integration, and creating sustainable prosperity for future generations. Addressing this challenge requires stronger partnership, deeper collaboration, and collective actions across governments, multilateral institutions, regulators, financial institutions, research community, and the private sector. On behalf of the ISDB Group, allow me to reaffirm our continued commitment to supporting member countries in advancing authentic, inclusive, and development-driven Islamic financial ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. May I kindly ask you to remain on the stage? And also, may I invite Dr. Sami Al-Suwailim to join us as we proceed to one of the key milestones of today's forum, the official launch of the flagship report, Islamic Finance in Azerbaijan, Breaking New Ground. Ladies and gentlemen, Islamic finance continues to gain momentum across new markets, creating opportunities for sustainable development, financial inclusion, and economic diversification. To mark this important development, the Islamic Development Bank Institute and International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation have prepared a flagship report. The purpose of the report is to highlight why the time is right for Azerbaijan to focus on developing Islamic finance and to outline the anticipated shift in Azerbaijan's Islamic finance landscape with forthcoming legal and regulatory framework. My congratulations. Thank you, gentlemen. You may now return to your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen for a short video presentation introducing the report.
Azerbaijan stands at a pivotal intersection of trade corridors, capital flows, and a fast-evolving financial sector. Now, a new chapter is opening: Islamic finance. The Islamic Development Bank Institute, ISDBI, and the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, are pleased to launch a new report titled Islamic Finance in Azerbaijan, Breaking New Ground. This report brings together market analysis and executive insights from stakeholder interviews, mapping where Islamic finance stands today and what could unlock its next phase in Azerbaijan. Why Azerbaijan? 4 forces stand out: proximity to key Islamic markets, strong sovereign fundamentals, a gateway role along regional trade routes, and the potential to build future-ready institutional services, including sukuk listing pathways. Azerbaijan's Islamic finance sector is nascent, but the momentum is visible in regulatory and market developments. From structural reforms to a national financial sector strategy to draft legal amendments. In February 2026, Rabitabank launched Sharia-compliant products under a sandbox regime approved by the Central Bank of Azerbaijan. Looking ahead, the report projects growth scenarios for Islamic banking and sukuk. In the base case, Islamic banking assets could reach $1.4 billion by 2030 and $2.7 billion by 2035. For sukuk, the analysis anticipates a debut issuance of $500 million by 2030, with issuance totaling $1.5 billion by 2035. But Islamic finance is bigger than banking and sukuk. The report explores what it could take to build a broader ecosystem, spanning development finance, social finance, and takaful, and showcases success stories of innovative instruments that could inform Azerbaijan's journey. To move from potential to practice, the report sets out phased recommendations across 5 pillars: regulatory reform, sector development, capacity building, public awareness, and regional positioning. This report offers a timely lens on how Islamic finance could evolve in Azerbaijan and what it will take to unlock it. Read the full report and join the conversation.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the official announcement of a Memorandum of Understanding between the Islamic Development Bank Institute and Labuan Financial Services Authority. The MOU seeks to establish a beneficial framework for collaboration in Islamic finance. The objective is to promote technical cooperation for the development and potential implementation of the ISDBI's innovative Awqaf-free zones concept within the Labuan International Business and Financial Center. May I invite Mr. Afendi Rashdi, Director General of Labuan Financial Services Authority, and Dr. Sami Al-Suweleim to the stage for the ceremonial exchange of the MOU and an official photo opportunity. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, we now begin our first panel discussion. The topic of the session is development traps and the role of Islamic finance. Our moderator is Mr. Mustafa Adil, Head of Islamic Finance at London Stock Exchange Group, where he leads the organization's Islamic finance initiatives and works closely with governments, development institutions, and financial markets across the globe. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mustafa Adil.
Thank you, Sister Medina, for the very kind introduction, and to the organizers of this excellent event. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I am delighted to be here with you today to discuss what is a very important but not often discussed topic, which is the impact of development traps on emerging economies and the role that Islamic finance can play in addressing some of these challenges. We have a distinguished group of panelists for the session today, representing leaders from central banks and multilateral institutions from all across the world. But before I introduce my fellow participants and panelists for the session, I would like to take this opportunity to launch another research report, which is focused on middle income traps. This report is the second in a series of thought leadership reports that is being spearheaded by the Islamic Development Bank Institute in collaboration with the London Stock Exchange Group that is focusing on the development traps that are impacting ISDB member countries. And the report not only looks at how to identify and what is the impact of these challenges, but also provides actionable recommendations that member countries can implement and highlights the role that Islamic finance can play in helping to address some of these structural challenges that countries find themselves in. As part of the launch, we would like to play a short video that highlights the key findings of this report.
Some economies climb fast, then suddenly slow down. Growth stalls, productivity plateaus, and the path to high income status becomes increasingly elusive. This is the middle income trap. For many countries, it could shape growth, competitiveness, and development opportunities over the next decade. This report, Surmounting the Middle Income Trap, is the second knowledge product report in the series of development traps reports. This series is the result of an ongoing collaboration between ISDB Institute and London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It is my pleasure to announce the launch of this important report on surmounting the middle income trap. This report is part of our flagship series on development traps. The series explores how Islamic finance can help overcome the challenges commonly faced by developing countries on their way toward high income status. The report identifies the key drivers of stagnation, outlines practical pathways of reform, and highlights how Islamic finance can contribute to an inclusive, resilient, and productivity-driven quantum leap. We thank our colleagues at the Institute and at the London Stock Exchange for their valuable contributions and tireless efforts in bringing this report to light. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The current report examines how the middle income trap affects 34 middle-income ISDB member countries, offering a focused, in-depth look at this development challenge. At its core, the middle income trap is marked by slowing growth, weakening productivity gains, and a widening gap with high-income economies. And it's not one problem, it's a multifaceted challenge driven by structural and compounding forces that can reinforce stagnation. This report intends to demonstrate 4 things. It signals early warnings, proposes preventive measures, highlights how Islamic finance can help, and draws lessons from selected country experiences. The report follows a practical pathway, understanding the trap, identifying how to prevent or mitigate it, determining when to act, and outlining the policies that can move countries forward. A core contribution of the report is how Islamic finance can support productive investment, deepen financial inclusion, strengthen resilience, and mobilize capital for SMEs, infrastructure, green transition, and social development. The report maps mechanisms that can support productivity, fiscal sustainability, and social institutional progress across 3 channels: risk-sharing and equity finance, asset-backed and ESG instruments, and Islamic social finance. It also sets out guiding principles, cross-cutting considerations for middle-income countries, and implementation considerations to ensure timely and sequenced action. Finally, the report segments countries into 6 groups and offers recommendations grounded in Islamic finance for each segment, aligned to 3 priorities: private sector development, talent development, and energy transition. Read the report for free on the ISDB Institute website and explore practical pathways to surmount the middle income trap.
Well, I think that provides us excellent context for the session ahead. And without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our speakers for the session, starting with Mr. Shaheen-Uddin Mahmoodzada, the Executive Director of the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, Mr. Adnan Zilani, Deputy Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia, Ms. Mihoko Kumamoto, Director of the Division of Prosperity at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, Dr. Arif Suleiman, the Group Chief Economist at Islamic Development Bank Group, and also participating virtually is Dr. Bambang Brojonegoro, the Dean at the Asian Development Bank Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. Before we begin, unfortunately, Dr. Bambang was not able to be here with us in person, but he did send us a pre-recorded video message that highlights his thoughts and insights on the topic. So we will first play his recorded message, and then we will go into the discussion with our distinguished panelists.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Your Excellency, Mr. Taleh Kasimov, Governor of Central Bank of the Republic of Azerbaijan, my distinguished co-panelists, Dr. Arif Suleiman, Chief Economist of the ISDB Group, our esteemed moderator, Mr. Mustafa Adil, and honorable participants of the 20th ISDB Global Forum on Islamic Finance. It is really a true honor to address this forum, even if only by video. I extend my sincere appreciation to Dr. Sami Al-Suwailem and the ISDB Institute for the kind invitation, and my regrets that prior commitments prevent me from joining you in Baku in person. As a former Director General of the Islamic Research and Training Institute, returning to this conversation feels in many ways like coming home. The middle income trap remains the primary developmental challenge facing the ISDB membership today. With nearly 60% of our member countries situated in the middle income bracket, the persistence of this trap is not a marginal issue. It is the central question of development across our region, and it is still inadequately understood, precisely because the resistance to escape comes from within the very structure of these economies themselves. This is not a temporary slowdown that conventional policy can quickly correct. It is a structural condition that demands a structural response. Although several ISDB countries have successfully moved from low income to middle income status, most continue to operate within low complexity production system with limited movement into high value added industries. Manufacturing capability remains weak. Innovation lags behind global standards. Productivity growth has slowed down, and income gaps with developed nations are widening rather than closing. We see this same pattern in parts of Asia. Several middle-income economies in Asia, despite different starting points, face strikingly similar structural constraints, which I have studied closely throughout my career. The middle-income trap cannot be diagnosed as a series of separate issues. It is the interaction of multiple structural impediments, like technological gaps, the underutilization of talent, weak institutions, and excessive reliance on debt finance. These weaknesses are self-reinforcing, locking economies into a low productivity equilibrium from which conventional policy alone cannot pull them out. The diagnosis must therefore be integrated, and so must the response. This is where Islamic finance offers something genuinely distinctive. We must move beyond viewing Islamic finance as merely an alternative financing instrument. It is in fact a full-fledged development framework intrinsically aligned with the growth of the real sector. Three strategic avenues stand out. First, risk-sharing structures such as mudarabah and musyarakah stimulate entrepreneurship and innovation precisely where conventional debt finance is too cautious to enter. Second, asset-based financing through sukuk ensures that financial flows remain anchored to productive assets in the real economy. Indonesia's sustained sovereign sukuk issuance since 2008 has positioned the country as one of the world's most active sovereign sukuk issuers. In 2018, Indonesia became the first country to issue a sovereign green sukuk, establishing a model for integrating Islamic finance with climate financing and sustainable development initiative. Third, Islamic social finance, including zakat and waqf, addresses the structural imbalances and human capital gaps that no commercial financing can close on its own. Taken together, these three avenues are especially important for economies that have become heavily over-leveraged on the financial side and chronically underinvested on the productive side. The global environment is become significantly less forgiving. Lower global growth, faster technological disruption, and increasing fragmentation of trade networks have fundamentally changed the calculus of development. Middle-income economies can no longer rely on the conventional approach of exploiting cheap labor and exporting commodities. The road to advanced economic status is now narrower and more competitive than at any point in our recent memory. In this environment, three priorities deserve our urgent attention. First, a productivity revolution, shifting our economies from factor-driven to innovation-driven growth. Second, a restructuring of financial system, reducing reliance on public debt and expanding equity-based and risk-sharing finance. Third, a deliberate strengthening of institutional capabilities. As I have emphasized in other forums this year, non-economic factors such as strong institutions, credible governance, and social resilience matter just as much as economic policy itself. Finally, our multilateral institution must evolve. The Islamic Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and our peers can no longer rely solely on traditional role of financier. We must embrace the role of system orchestrator, mobilizing private capital, supporting policy reform, promoting regional integration, and building shared knowledge platform. Development finance institutions today must be much more than just financiers. ADBI stands ready to deepen its partnership with the IsDB Institute on this shared agenda through joint research, capacity building, and policy dialogue across our member countries. The challenges before us are serious, but they are not insurmountable. With the right framework, the right instruments, and the right collaboration, Islamic finance can play a defining role in helping our member countries break free from middle income trap and achieve the sustainable prosperity that this forum so rightly places at its center. I look forward to the insights of my fellow panelists, and I wish the 20th ISDB Global Forum every success. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So that was an excellent set of insights from Dr. Bambang that gives us a macro perspective on the challenges of the development traps, talks about the evolving role of Islamic finance, and also talks about the evolving role of multilateral development institutions as well. So now that we've got an assessment of the macro, let us deep dive into some of the specific markets and their experiences when it comes to development traps. And Mr. Shaheen, I would like to start with you. We are in the beautiful city of Baku, and obviously Azerbaijan has its own unique economic development story. So what I wanted to ask you really was, from your perspective, what role has the central bank played in the economic development journey for Azerbaijan? What are some of the main challenges that you have had to overcome, and what are some of the hurdles that you still see ahead as you move forward?
Thank you very much, and welcome to the beautiful city in Baku. And I would like to greet all the audience here. Thank you very much for attending this panel. The great question that if you go one step back, the central bank's role, what's our role is, our mandate is price stability and financial stability. So the central bank can serve as a ultimate gatekeeper for economic stability. And our best serve to the economic development is increasing the trust to the system. Why the trust is important? In every economic model, Austrian, Keynesian, or monetarist development economics, all theories is about the capital, how the capital is allocated, how the capital is optimized. And which kind of capital we have right now, financial resources we have. We have fiscal resources, we have local private resources, and the international resources. When the central bank makes sure that the financial system is resilient, then the private sector's sources will be mobilized. So if you look to the numbers, our banking sector NPL ratio is below 3%. The liquidity is more than half of our requirements. The capital adequacy is around 18%, which is around 50% above our requirements. So it means the financial sector can do its intermediation. We have around 20 billion free risk-weighted asset, which can be allocated to the economy. The credit growth rate has outpaced the economic growth in last 3 years. So it shows that the financial sector is ready to support the economic development. And if you come to the price stability, why it's important, the other resource I said is the international capital. So the international capital comes when there is stability, when there is trust in the currency, when there is trust in the monetary policy, and when the communication of the monetary policy is transparent. And if you look to the inflation numbers, in last 3 years, the inflation was within our targeted band, around like plus minus 2% to the 4%. And it is projected to be in the next 2 years. So this is the, how we support the development and how we achieve this. In last 3 years, we modernized our regulatory framework in banking sector, not only in the traditional phases like transition to the latest Basel standards, but also in the emerging fields like market conduct, ESG, and so on. In capital markets as well, several amendments has been made to the current laws, and several new laws has been already developed and sent to the government, like rating agencies, derivative law for the venture capital, law for the crowdfunding, and etc. Even for the insurance market, we modernized our regulatory framework. Almost every compulsory product law had been rewritten, and some already sent to the government. And at the end, our depository base has been more than doubled in last 3 years. And first ever IPO has been made in last 3 years, and first floating rate bond has been issued in Azerbaijan. Our international ratings of the financial sector has been increased. If you look to the BICRA, Moody's, and Fitch ratings, the trust in the financial sector, trust in the monetary policy has been increased in last years. Of course, every reform has its hurdles, as you said. Almost in every reform, you should sacrifice short-term goals for the long-term success. So how we overcome these problems? We don't start with sharp reforms from the scratch. First we do pivotal regimes, as Mr. Excellency Talib Malam said. We start with the regulatory sandbox. Almost every field, we start with the guidelines just to prepare the financial sector and general public in total for the upcoming reforms. So what's important and what's probably the hurdle is to keep in pace with other stakeholders, so not to outpace them. Otherwise, probably the success can be less than expected. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think some excellent insights, and particularly liked how you started and consistently mentioned about trust in the financial sector, the financial resilience that leads to effective capital mobilization, and in particular the point about reforms is not to overburden or to move too quickly, but to move at the appropriate pace and to take all stakeholders along. I think is a very, very interesting point that a lot of markets can reflect on. Mr. Adnan, I want to come to you, and obviously Malaysia is a very, very different market compared to Azerbaijan. When we look at ISDB member countries, it is one of the most developed from an economic perspective, but also from an Islamic finance perspective, it is one of the most developed and deep markets when it comes to Islamic finance. So I wanted to really get your insights on what are the key economic and social challenges that Malaysia is facing today, and how is Islamic finance contributing to address these challenges?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, thank you for having me on the panel. Also, I just want to congratulate the launch of the report earlier. I think the work LSE and together with the ISDB Institute is very relevant for Malaysia, because we have been working towards a high-income country, a high-income nation for quite some time. And right now we are categorized as upper middle income. Perhaps in the next couple of years that could change, inshallah. But it would be very relevant for us to see and read in detail the report if there's anything more that we can learn as well from the report. Thank you for that. Just for context, perhaps because also in the context of development, Malaysia, we've had some strong performance in growth for a number of years. We used to be growing at 8% during the 1990s, and even during the 2000s. This slowed down somewhat to around 5%. And even as the past couple of years, coming out of the pandemic, we have been able to sustain that kind of growth rate. I think important to that is that Firstly, is that we've had to undertake a lot of reforms, structural reforms, as we move to through the years, as we move towards becoming or sustaining higher income through higher productivity as well. So structural reforms was important. The government also had to put in place fiscal reforms with strengthening the fiscal rules, as well as introducing a Fiscal Responsibility Act, putting us on a path towards a disciplined approach in managing the fiscal position. But importantly, the past couple of years, we've stepped up increasing investments in Malaysia. So investments, both from foreign direct investments as well as domestic investments. So we have encouraged foreign direct investment through various missions, providing, I suppose, incentives, setting up industrial parks. And I think yesterday there was one presentation on that, on Halal Industrial Park. And we have many industrial parks in Malaysia. But also the government has put in place various roadmaps in semiconductors, in steel, in energy transition, various policy roadmaps for the industry to focus on, so that they know that the government facilitation is there, but also the general direction of the industry would be to move up the value chain in these various industries, and what are the steps that can be undertaken. So we're on a good path towards enhancing the quality of our growth, as well as inshallah, eventually achieving the high income state recognition or status. But there are structural challenges that remain. I think first and foremost and top of mind right now, even for us, is the income and cost living pressures. It doesn't help that the current challenges that everyone's facing around the globe, cost pressure. And then the next challenge that we look towards is, or trying to resolve, is what was mentioned earlier as well, productivity. Productivity and as well as innovation. How do we enhance, continue to enhance productivity? Because that is part and part of growing. And last but not least, it's to ensure that the growth is actually inclusive. So how does Islamic finance contribute or towards solutions in all this? I think right now we are leveraging Islamic finance towards more impact-based. And we launched, in 2017, we had already launched a framework. We called it value-based intimidation framework, that where many of our Islamic financial institutions embraced developed I suppose practices and conduct that could contribute towards increasing the impact of Islamic finance in particular areas, including climate, including social impact, as well as in governance as well. And so this was one area where we leverage on Islamic finance for the financial institutions to look beyond profit and commercial considerations, to look at the wider goals of finance. And this involved also expanding financing access to the underserved. So this was one of the social objectives as well, that was as a result of the initiative, expanding to the underserved, in particular micro and SMEs financing, as well as underserved communities. So if we were to take this, I would say that where Islamic finance has played a key role is in trying to overcome these economic and social challenges. One is in terms of making that, being focused on the impact, where we were able to hone in on issues such as the environment, climate, and for us in particular, disasters. And this also includes for the takaful industry as well. And the other is on uplifting communities, serving the underserved. We have a number of programs that we have launched and rolled out, piloted and moved on to larger scale, including in social finance programs such as ITECA, where we focus on micro entrepreneurs by blending philanthropic capital, in particular zakat, combining it with microfinancing, and as well as providing the training to uplift micro entrepreneurs. And where we started with 40 participants back in 2020 during the pandemic. Now it's grown to more than 14,000 participants, up to 15 Islamic financial institutions participating. And the next is, as I mentioned earlier, is how Islamic finance can also help to achieve or facilitate achieving the transition to a more climate resilient economy. And Islamic finance is able to mobilize private capital at scale in this. We have set up a few programs, including with support from the government, where the government has allocated some funds for us to be able to blend it with private sector, with financial institutions, to enable risk-sharing solutions that could go into areas such as food security and climate resilience. We also have set up through a collaboration from the central bank together with the industry, a climate finance innovation lab, where projects will be assessed by the industry, and we will try to meet the funding needs of these projects. So we have so far launched this about 2 years back, and they're onboarding about 30 projects in this climate finance innovation lab to look at solutions to how to finance, in particular, transition or climate resilient projects. So we are leveraging heavily on Islamic finance to meet all these financing needs, which actually look beyond the commercial factors to also look at impact factors. I think Islamic finance serves as a very natural partner and a vehicle to achieve these objectives. So maybe I'll just stop there.
No, thank you very much. That's some excellent insights. And, in particular, when you started talking about the policy roadmaps and the structural approach that the government is taking to direct the private sector as to areas for improvement with a focus on increasing productivity and innovation, that is something that will continue in this conversation as well, and I'll bring in as a topic for other panelists also. And of course, the VBI initiative that you mentioned, the value-based intermediation initiative, which serves as a role model for many other markets as to how to push Islamic finance to go beyond simply the commercial considerations or the profitability considerations, and also align more with the broader mandate of Islamic finance and the role it plays in a society. Ms. Mihuko, I want to bring you into the conversation. And again, I think if we transition from the local perspective to a global perspective, what we found very often is countries, as they go through their economic development, end up in these development traps without realizing it, right? They feel that the policies that have helped them move from lower income to middle income, will continue to work, but they don't recognize the structural challenges that sometimes exist and the inertia and the resistance that sometimes is there when it comes to these development traps. So from your perspective, looking at it globally, how important is it for countries to recognize the different development traps that they may be facing, the challenges that exist in being able to escape them, and the need for a strategic approach in addressing them?
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And firstly, let me start by expressing sincere appreciation for inviting us, UNITAR, United Nations Institute for Training and Research, to this important panel discussion. Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely, to recognize development traps and also to have a structural approach is absolutely critical in overcoming various challenges we have faced with. In addition to traditional development traps, as everyone knows, all of us know, we have faced with emerging challenges, including technological disruption, widening gaps, inequality, and climate risk, climate change. So we have faced with mounting challenges, more uncertain and more complex. And as you know, when we think about the Sustainable Development Goals, we have 169 indicators. We are on track for only 35% of these indicators. So we are significantly off track. So when we think about how to overcome these challenges, one important aspect is traditionally we tend to think these issues by sector, like siloed approach. However, we have to move away from this siloed approach, but move to more harmonized, interconnected approach. So that's one important aspect I would like to highlight. And then here I would like to introduce to you, and I believe that many of you know already, but UN 2.0 approach. Under this approach, 5 key elements, so-called content elements, have been introduced, and I strongly believe these 5 key elements can be applied to be able to effectively overcome these so-called development challenges. Number 1 is data-driven approach. Whatever we do, it needs to be evidence-based, data-based approach. So that's number 1. And number 2, strategic foresight. Nowadays, what we are facing is the situation has become so uncertain, so unpredictable. So to understand not only the current challenges we have faced with, but to anticipate upcoming risk has become absolutely crucial. And this approach, strategic foresight, it's a tool to better understand upcoming risk, has become extremely helpful. And UNITAR, once again, we are a UN agency specializing in capacity development. We have received multiple requests from member countries to enhance their capacity on strategic foresight. Now, number 3, digitalization. In planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, every aspect of our business, now digital technology must be effectively applied. So this is, once again, crucial element. Behavioral science, ultimately what we are promoting is to encourage, to empower people so that they take necessary actions. Now, for us, it is absolutely critical to understand why people take certain actions and what measures can be introduced so that people can start taking different actions, and that needs to be based on so-called behavioral science. And lastly, and importantly, and many speakers before have already mentioned, innovation. Traditional approach, business as usual approach is no longer sufficient. What we need to do is to take innovative approach. So once again, innovation is absolutely essential. So let me stop here. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And that essentially gives an excellent structural framework for how to look at this 5 key elements. Data-driven, strategic foresight, digitalization, behavioral science, and innovation is an excellent landscape to use to start to build out that strategy. So thank you for that. And we will come back a bit more on the question of the capacity building as well. But Dr. Arif, I want to bring you into the conversation. And obviously, you know, as a representative of Islamic Development Bank Group, right, the ISDB has a mandate and has been working for the last 50 years to, you know, support the economic development of its member countries, right? What I'd like to know is, 1, what has been the experience of the bank in supporting different member countries in different markets? And number 2, something that Dr. Bambang touched upon was how the role of the development banks need to evolve to cater to their needs going forward. So if you could please comment on that.
Thank you, Mustafa, for that question. Thank you, Dr. Sami, for the invitation to be part of the panel. I think the points made, the 5 different areas that you spoke about are important, and I'll touch on some of them as we go forward. So, Mustafa, 50 years is a long time, and it's long enough to accumulate quite a bit of experience, but also at the same time enough time for us to challenge some of the assumptions on development itself. And as with everything in life, context is important. So for many of the early years of the ISDB, like most multilateral development institutions, we operated on a very simple, straightforward premise. Provide capital, build infrastructure, and hopefully growth follows. But like with everything in life, life is not that simple. If only it were, we'd be in a much better place now. 50 years later, or 51, 52 years later, experience tells us that development is a lot more complex. So while infrastructure is critical, and it's still a core part of our business, it's not the be-all and end-all. So one of the key lessons we've learned is context is important. And this is where the point on evidence-based decision-making is useful. So infrastructure, we're not saying is not important. It remains essential. The roads, ports, power plants, etc. are there. But the same project, same type of project can yield very different outcomes depending on the context itself. So in one instance, a road could open up transport corridor or transform a regional trade corridor. In another instance, a similar sort of road, same investment, similar sort of infrastructure, but that road sits underutilized for decades because the regulatory environment around that does not allow that trade corridor to thrive. So it's the context that ended up killing the impact of that potential project. Now the lesson that we draw out of this is financing alone cannot create development. We cannot ignore the context. Now I keep saying this word context, and how do we understand the context? From an ISDB perspective, what we are pushing is this evidence-based decision-making. So we're doing a lot of these country diagnostic studies to underpin our country engagement frameworks and our member country partnership strategies. Now, at the core of development has to be the country. Country-led development is important. We cannot impose it from the outside. And attempts at doing that have not proved successful across the world. So putting countries in the driving seat and letting them play that coordinating role, and these country-led development strategies and country platforms become very important. Now, if you look again, go back to the issue of the context, historically the focus has been on financing the gap as opposed to tackling the bottleneck that's holding back development. So even when you look at the various development traps that have been highlighted, unless we prioritize and figure out exactly what is the binding constraint, what do we need to relax those constraints, and then impact on that. So the third element is around private sector, and we've been saying this for decades. It's important to bring in private sector. They're the engine of growth. They create jobs. They would drive innovation, enhance productivity, etc. But private sector doesn't move purely because we have an aspiration or hope for it to come in. It would look at the risk return before it moves, and in the space of risk and return, perception is as good as reality, and that's where the MDBs have an important role to play. And from the ISDB perspective, our work on public-private partnerships, the work through the ISEC's provision of investment, export credit insurance plays a very important role. Now looking ahead, there's been the call for MDBs to be bigger, bolder, but we also need to be more precise and more targeted in our interventions. So country diagnostics, incorporating the work of our evaluations, the project completions, etc., are important if we are going to be looking at how do we learn from our past and how do we move to the next stage of development. How do we address the bottlenecks that are holding back our countries and not just financing the gaps that we see in the market? So we have to do more than just providing financing, but again, one has to be selective. So selectivity is important, and not all MDB should be doing the same thing. So in the ISDB context, we say, where is our comparative advantages, and let's focus on those. And on some of the areas that we don't necessarily have the comparative advantage, let's leave that to the other development partners, and let's collaborate with them. Let's leverage on their skills and their comparative advantage and have a much bigger impact on the ground. So at the end of the day, important to provide more than just financing. We must help create the right enabling environment, strengthen the institutions, improve the investment climate, but also the role of the guarantees, etc., to bring in private sector. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think what you say would resonate with everybody here, that financing is never enough, and it's interesting for me to see how economic theory comes full circle, because for many years we were told that countries are not unique. If you have problem A, you apply solution X, and that should resolve it. But now we learn that no, countries are unique. Everything has a context, and the solution has to cater to the specific needs and requirements of the market. So I think that is very interesting. Mr. Adnan, I want to come to you now for the next question. And I want to build on something that Ms. Mihoko mentioned at the start of her answer, which was that we need to move from silos to a more interconnected approach, right? And obviously collaboration is a key driver of Malaysia's success story as well. So from a central bank perspective, what specific scalable collaboration models have demonstrated impact, and how can member countries further strengthen their collective efforts to address structural challenges?
Thank you. Thank you. So to progress, we really need to move beyond our industry. I suppose when we just focused in the past on financial sector, what the financial sector can do and collaborate within, even among the players, it achieved certain progress, but really it wasn't really scalable. I mean, when we expanded collaboration beyond the sector itself, that's where we started to make inroads. In particular, for example, especially for social finance, because social finance cuts across philanthropic capital, it cuts across, for us, it cuts across also various religious authorities, for us to be able to mobilize zakat, wakaf, and make that part of the Islamic finance ecosystem as a whole. And even the government regulation, the broader federal government regulations came into the picture as well. So having collaborating at the national level, achieving, having common goals has been very important in mobilizing everyone towards basically coming up with initiatives that are really be able to work together. And this is examples, including in, I mentioned earlier, the ITECAT program, where it also works with the religious authorities, with training institutes, but also we have initiatives such as the Halal Industrial Park, which brings together state governments, the Halal Development Corporation yesterday, and as well as financial institutions. So working beyond the sector across different stakeholders will take time, takes a little bit of time, but the gains can be quite immense. And the other thing which probably I should mention as well is we tend to start working in small pilots. So small pilots allow us to test. It's something like even sandbox, which was some sandbox models which we've used in the past. But pilots allow us to test and develop procedures, or develop the regulations and models and business models that could be viable and could be scaled up. And once the pilot is successful, then we start to roll out in a bigger scale. And not to mention, last but not least, I think how the collaboration comes into the picture is also in terms of building the market infrastructure and the various platforms that are required for all this. So we have a few, which one of them I mentioned earlier was the Climate Finance Innovation Lab, which brings in many industry players together to look at solutions for financing of climate resilient initiatives. We also have other platforms such as the Digital Asset Innovation Hub, which we launched earlier this year. And I think we also have platforms, for example, the MIFC Business Network, which brings in Islamic financial institutions, both banking and takaful and capital market players together in a platform to work towards enhancing Malaysia's proposition in Islamic finance. So those are the three things which I think could be quite relevant for this.
No, I think definitely, and a very holistic approach covering the different aspects. I am mindful of the time, but there are a couple of questions that I want to come to. So, Mr. Shaheen, I want to come to you. And one of the topics that we really want to get some insights on is the development of Islamic finance and the acceleration of Islamic finance in Azerbaijan. So earlier in the morning, in his keynote address, His Excellency the Governor highlighted some of the strategic initiatives that as Central Bank of Azerbaijan is rolling out. We saw in the launch of the report some of the potential for the development of Islamic finance. So, from your perspective, as Azerbaijan looks to develop and accelerate Islamic finance in the region, what role do you think the industry will play going forward? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned from other markets that have helped to shape how you are going to roll out Islamic finance in Azerbaijan?
Thank you very much. To be honest, I don't agree with the report's numbers. It shows, I think, 0.5 billion in sukuk and 1.3 billion in banks assets, if I don't misremember. I expect much more. Why I expect much more? Because due to it's the answer to your question. What lessons do you learn from other markets? When we start Islamic finance, to be honest, we didn't know that there is need, or we are not sure if there is need in the market or not. Because several surveys has been conducted, and the results shows that I'm just probably the numbers are not exact, but around 8% says that we need Islam finance in Azerbaijan, and 70% says that it is the charity. The banks give money for free and don't take back. So it shows that still we lack the capacity of literacy. It's normal. It's the emerging topic for us, Islamic finance, and it is a new topic for financial sector as well, for central bank as well, and for the other, for the public in general. So when developing these amendments to the law, we had just one opinion in our mind. To give neutrality, to give the equal rules for traditional banking and like conventional banking and Islamic banking, which we don't see in our regional partners and in the many countries that shift from conventional to Islamic finance. I think they didn't change the enablers in parallel. What we mean with neutrality, I could say 3 neutralities. First, the tax neutrality. Without tax neutrality, the loan is expensive in Islamic finance, which we already have amended in our law, so that the two banking can compete with each other in the asset size. The second is deposit insurance. We can call it takaful. It's not amended in parallel in many countries. So when the financial literacy is low, you don't expect people just to put money to the bank without any security. That's what we have changed in our law, just to give the neutrality in the deposit insurance, so that the people can trust to Islamic system as and to the conventional system. And the third one, I think one of the most important ones that still other countries don't look at, is neutrality in the monetary policy. The bank are not generating revenue only through the loan. They have the liquid assets which are invested to the capital markets or the money market or to the standing facilities of the central bank. So when you don't give the neutrality in the standing facility, or when you don't create the money market, the banks cannot generate enough revenue from the liquid assets, which then they go for the increasing the not rates, but still the profit share in the Islamic loans, which makes them less attractive comparing to the conventional banks. So we tried to give these 3 neutralities to the Islamic windows, and to see to better analyze the demand. So then I hope in 25th of in the annual meeting of IsDB in 2031, we will have much more figures than 1.3. But what industry plays here, we are giving the rules of the game, but the players should play it. Yes, they should have the willingness to play it. So if the financial institutions will not invest to the professional capacity, then or to the technical capacity, infrastructure capacity, then the game will not be played. So what industry roles is a key role there. Do they want to diversify their portfolios or not? But if they will want to do it, we are here to support the Islamic window, and we are ready to support the demand. But still, we should see the demand in order to move to the full-fledged banking with a separate licensing and separate maybe the court system, etc. I hope it's the answer to your question.
No, it's a brilliant answer, and I love the aspiration and the ambition, and I'm also very confident that with the right support that Azerbaijan market can be much bigger than what has been projected based on the experience of other markets. And I also like the fact that you're not going into it blind. You recognize the awareness challenge which exists in every new market. I mean, people have a complete misunderstanding of Islamic finance and what it is when it is launched, and the fact that you are putting it on equal footing with conventional from a tax perspective, deposit protection, mobilization of liquid assets to make sure that it is competitive and profitable, which is fantastic. And again, as you said, we will come back in 5 years and see, inshallah, success where it has overachieved beyond what has been projected, inshallah. I'm mindful of the time, we're very short, but I do have a few questions that I want to get through. So, Ms. Mihoko, I want to come to you. One of the things that was repeated consistently is the need for innovation, the need for development of the labor force to move up the value chain as part of a strategic effort to address development traps. We see in many literature that one of the key ways is for capacity building. And so from your perspective, what is the importance of capacity building, of human resource development in overcoming the development trap that countries might fall in?
Thank you very much for the question. So ultimately, development traps are capacity traps. Therefore, whatever efforts we make, capacity development needs to be central to whatever we are doing. And this one is important because what our dear panel member mentioned, ultimately we're going to have to move away from dependency and put country, society, or people in the driving seat. And to do that, once again, capacity development is key. Now, I would like to highlight 3 key lessons we have learned from UNITAR, United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Number 1, this is what I mentioned previously. Once again, systems thinking. So moving away from siloed approach to a holistic, systemic thinking and systemic action is absolutely critical. And number 2, when we think about capacity development, we shouldn't think only about individual capacity development, but 3 layers. Individual capacity development, empowering leaders or decision makers, and also everyone in the society so that they will be able to take necessary actions, but also institutional level and also entire ecosystem. So whatever capacity development we implement, it needs to be this 3-layered approach. And then the final point, capacity development approach, learning approach, is rapidly evolving, and this speed of change is accelerating, particularly because of digital technologies. Therefore, traditional learning approach or capacity development approach will continue to exist. Simultaneously, it is extremely important for all of us to adapt to the shifting environment. So our approach needs to be much more agile, much more flexible, and much more holistic. Let me stop here, but thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, and I think I completely agree, and this has been the experience for countries that have been successful, is without a structured, holistic approach, you're not going to be able to address those challenges. We have 2 minutes left, so Dr. Arif, I will come to you to close out the session and really to focus on Islamic finance. Obviously, ISDB is a champion, global champion for Islamic finance. From your perspective, what role should Islamic finance play in the economic development of markets? And maybe if you could share with us some of the success stories that you have seen in different markets where it has played a fundamental role.
Thank you. Being very mindful of the time. I think what we need to understand, and Dr. Sami mentioned it in his introductory remarks, that Islamic finance is a $4 trillion industry, but at the same time, the point that Shaheen made, it needs to be demystified. It's only once that is demystified is that growth going to take off. The big challenge we face at the moment is it's seen as conventional or Islamic finance. So it's always been discussed as an alternate, and what is now becoming, and through the work of the Islamic Development Bank Institute and the ISDB itself, we've managed to get the international community to start recognizing and capturing Islamic finance as part of the resource flows for sustainable development through the initiatives with the TOSD. So I think that is a huge step in the right direction. And yes, it's taken a long time for the international community to acknowledge this, but I guess better late than never. So in terms of the challenges, etc., the demystification is important, but once you start seeing Islamic finance as part of the overall development toolkit, we then need, the question then becomes, when you have a development challenge, what is the best tool to utilize that? And in the case of Islamic finance for long-term infrastructure, you have the Sukuk instruments. For SMEs, you've got the Musharaka, Mudaraba financing, and then for the social contracts, the social challenges, you've got the instruments of Waqf and Zakah. So at the end of the day, the success stories, Azerbaijan, inshallah, we will be talking about as a success story. And I was going to mention the work being done in this market, but I think that's been covered sufficiently. If you look back 10, 15 years back now, West Africa, we helped Senegal with its first Sukuk issuance, and that brought to the party many non-traditional financiers who were afraid of getting into that market. Forget conventional or Islamic, they were just not willing to get into that market, and we've opened that market to them. So from the ISDB group perspective, a lot of work has been done on building the overall global Islamic finance architecture. Things that we take for granted today, the IOFIs, IFSB, etc., were all, ISDB instrumental in getting that Islamic finance architecture established at the country level with the different legal regulatory frameworks, like the work we're doing now in Azerbaijan has been done across the globe in many countries. And I think those have set the benchmarks as we move forward, and even at the firm level with the equity investments that the ISDB has made to get banks off the ground when others were not willing to take that risk. So I think there's a lot that's happened, there's a lot going to happen. The future looks bright, and inshallah, we look forward to huge impact on the ground and Islamic finance taking its rightful role on the development landscape.
Perfect. And on that note of optimism, I would like to bring the session to a close. We have run out of time, actually overrun our time a little bit, unfortunately, but I would like the audience to please join me in giving a big round of applause to our speakers for this session.
Thank you to our moderator and distinguished panelists for the I kindly invite our Please remain on the stage because we would like to present some tokens of appreciation to our distinguished speakers. Thank you. Thank you, moderator, and thank you, our panelists. Dear participants, should you have any questions regarding the report or topics discussed during the session, please feel free to send them to the email address displayed on the screen. The team will be pleased to respond and continue the conversation beyond today's forum. Ladies and gentlemen, our second panel discussion focuses on achieving food and energy security. This panel session will discuss AUKA-free zones as innovative, technology-driven hubs for mobilizing social capital to address food and energy security challenges. The session will also explore the potential of Islamic third sector in driving inclusive growth. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and distinguished panelists. Our moderator for this session is Mr. Yahya Alim Urrahman, Associate Manager at the Islamic Development Bank Institute, where he contributes to thought leadership and knowledge initiatives advancing Islamic finance and sustainable development. Joining him on the panel, Mr. Valeh Al-Asgarov, Chairman of the Board of the Alat Free Economic Zone Authority, Republic of Azerbaijan. The Board of Authority is responsible for the overall regulation, oversight, management, and operation of the zone. Dr. Mansour Mukhtar, Chairman of the Board of the Bank of Industry, Nigeria. Dr. Mukhtar is a distinguished economist and former Vice President of the Islamic Development Bank, who has also served as the Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Budget, and Economic Development, and held leadership roles at both the World Bank and African Development Bank. Professor Dato Dr. Azmi Omar, President and Chief Executive Officer of INSEAD University, the Global University of Islamic Finance. Professor Azmi is a globally recognized scholar and practitioner who previously served as the Director General of the Islamic Research and Training Institute and has advised governments and international organizations on Islamic finance strategies and policy development. And Mr. Orhan Mamodov, Chairman of the Small and Medium Business Development Agency of Azerbaijan. Mr. Mamodov has extensive experience in economic policy and business development and currently leads Azerbaijan's national efforts to develop SME growth. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists. Brother Yahya, the floor is yours.
Bismillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Thank you, Sister Nadina, for that kind introduction, and welcome to the esteemed panelists. As we heard this morning from the various keynote speeches and the session, that we currently face, the global community faces numerous challenges in terms of the middle income trap, and to address those challenges doesn't require a standard reactive. We live in a world of complex challenges, and the solutions that need to address them need to be highly sophisticated. So at the Islamic Development Bank Institute, we've been working towards innovative solutions to address some of the most pressing challenges. The theme of the forum is achieving sustainable prosperity through Islamic finance. And when it comes to achieving sustainable prosperity, something that stands out are the challenges related to food and energy security and water security. In this regard, the Institute has been working on numerous solutions, and one of those solutions has been around bringing the concept of waqf, which is a historical concept and a traditional instrument, with a relatively modern free zone concept, and combining that and then enabling it through technology to come with a solution to address the idea of food and energy security. Today we have a very distinguished group of panelists that sit at the literal cross-section of these thoughts and ideas. We have someone from a free zone who has the experience of establishing and running a very successful free zone. We have someone who has multilateral experience and an experience of finance at the global level, but also as an industrial bank of a member country. We have someone with significant experience in Islamic finance and human capital, and how that is a critical instrument in achieving the solutions that we're talking about. And then last but not least, we have someone who talks about the engine of growth, which is the small and medium enterprises. So I'm going to start with Mr. Wale from the Elat Free Zone. Welcome, sir, to this panel. The Awqaf Free Zone that we are envisaging is basically marrying the concept of a free zone with Waqf. But your experience as a free zone operator, and especially based on the experience with Elat, how do you see what are the critical success factors in establishing a free zone, and what has been the experience of Elat in this regard? Working. Some more, please. Yeah. You can use my mic.
Sorry, what kind of investors are interesting for us, for the Elat Free Economic Zone? We are ready to consider any proposals, but our preference are businesses engaged in high value added export-oriented manufacturing. And export-oriented manufacturing means that businesses established as the territory of the Elat Free Economic Zone obliged to export at least 75% of goods produced at the territory of the Elat Free Economic Zone outside of the Republic of Azerbaijan. A main reason for that, to avoid unfair competition between businesses established at the territory of the Elat Free Economic Zone, using all our incentives, and businesses in base economy of the Republic of Azerbaijan. And from previous experience, I know that Elat Free Economic Zone will be a successful project if we will be much more attractive than any other free economic or the other types of free zones in surrounding countries and maybe in much more wider geography. And because of it, we tried to establish such free economic zone, which will be more attractive than any free economic or other type of zones in surrounding countries and much more wider geography. First reason for the attractiveness of the Elat Free Economic Zone. Elat Free Economic Zone located in vicinity of Baku International Sea Trade Port at intersection of international transport corridors from east to west and backwards, and from north to south and backwards. It means that our clients will have and will have access to all kinds of transportation logistic services. In addition to that, we agreed with local cargo carrier Silkwell Airlines, and they start construction of cargo airport as a territory of the free economic zone, and maybe it will be first airport as the territory of free economic zone. And this airport will be ready to use next year. And main purpose of establishment of this airport is to propose to our clients, our businesses established as the territory of the Elat Free Economic Zone, in addition to transportation logistics services, which I mentioned before, seaways, motorways, railways, to provide to them additional services using air cargo services. And main reason for that is to establish such conditions which will allow us to invite high-tech companies to the Elat Free Economic Zone, because without cargo airport, without cargo services, services. They will never will come to the bilateral economic zone. In addition to that, we are ready to provide to our clients ready-to-use industrial land plots. It means that we are ready to provide to them land plots with on-site, ready-to-use on-site and off-site infrastructure and utilities in advance of demand. If we will agree about establishment of their businesses, we are ready to provide land plots with all kinds of infrastructure and utilities, ready to use infrastructure and utilities. Next reason for the attractiveness of the bilateral economic zone, our incentives. Zero taxes, all corporate taxes are zero, and all custom duties and taxes are zero. And maybe main reason for the attractiveness of the bilateral economic zone is legislation of the bilateral economic zone. Bilateral economic zone established under the law of the Republic of Azerbaijan on the bilateral economic zone, adopted by the parliament and signed by the president of the Republic of Azerbaijan as prevailing law of the Republic of Azerbaijan. And under this law, laws of the Republic of Azerbaijan not mentioned in our law, not applicable at the territory of the bilateral economic zone and for subjects of the bilateral economic zone. And only 3 laws of the Republic of Azerbaijan: anti-money laundering law and criminal laws of the Republic of Azerbaijan applicable. Other laws of the Republic of Azerbaijan not applicable, and our legislation consists. This law, as I said before, law of the Republic of Azerbaijan on the bilateral economic zone, and our internal regulations, which covers all kinds of relation between us and our clients, our investors. And very important point that our clients don't need to have any contact with any state entities, with any governmental bodies. We are responsible, bilateral economic zone authority responsible for everything, for registration, licensing, certification, etc., etc. And I think that it's a very important point for investors to know that they have contact only with one administrative entity, bilateral economic zone regulatory body. And because we opened our doors for potential investors in July of 2023 when we've finished construction works on first 60 hectares territory. But because of high demand, we forced to start construction works on next stage, 138 hectares territory. And for the same reason, we start construction works on so-called phase 3 development area allocated for heavy industries. And as I said before, at the territory of FES, bilateral economic zone, investors, Silkway Airlines investors start construction of cargo airport. And I hope that it will attract a lot of investors from high-tech industries. Is it enough?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Wali. I think it's good to learn from the experience of a free zone that has recently been established. And if I think my key takeaway, I think your insights is to have a robust regulatory environment that is incentivizing investors, that gives them a competitive level playing field, shields them from interference and the local and national laws, and provides them that sort of a global access point. The other point which you mentioned, which is very critical, is around the logistics and having access through the airport and the seaport, as you mentioned. So I think these are critical factors which need to be kept in mind when designing, and we've done that as part of our own feasibility studies, that we're looking at the legal and regulatory and operational considerations. So thank you very much for those insights. Let me move on now to from a free zone perspective to a developmental perspective. And Dr. Mansour, I know you wear multiple hats, being part formerly of the government and the Ministry of Finance, and then also multilateral, and of course being my boss as well, so at the Islamic Development Bank. So I think let's start with the development finance paradigm. You know, we see that increasingly for concepts like free zones, globalization is a critical element, and the way things are moving, you know, the fundamental premise of globalization is being challenged. So how do you see that from a perspective from development finance, and how does that bode, you know, the direction that the globalization is taking in the paradigm shift? Please.
Thank you, Yahya. Let me first seize the opportunity, if you permit, to really pay tribute to Islamic Development Bank, and particularly the Islamic Development Bank Institute, for their unwavering leadership in advancing Islamic finance across the world. And I say this really, this is deeply personal to me. The years I spent, I've seen how you've tirelessly worked on this agenda, the mission-driven, the passion, the commitment and dedication of staff really has helped shape discourse in Islamic finance. And now turning to the question you raised, indeed, we're facing major changes in the global development landscape, and that we have to contend with as a reality. And essentially, the very tenets or the basics underpinning globalization are being tested to the limits. Open markets, free flow of capital, and sets of rules that guide relationships between countries. All of that, we've seen different stresses on these. And in particular, we've seen how there is growing fragmentation, how we've seen geopolitical tensions creating problems, vulnerabilities for member countries, and really leading to reversal of the developmental gains that have been achieved over the years. And we've also seen, I have to point out, one other issue to contend with: the erosion of multilateral cooperation, multilateralism. Progressively, these institutions and framework that have helped forge greater coordination and collaboration, that have helped support collective action to address development issues, we are seeing these being eroded. In fact, even the consensus on what constitutes key development policy directions is being challenged when we are talking about whether climate change is real or not. So this is what we are having to do with, and on top of that, we also have major climatic changes that have become more frequent. We have conflict. All of these have had a devastating impact, particularly on food and energy supply and prices in member countries. And that basically also means that they need additional resources to be able to meet their developmental needs. We are talking about SDGs 2030, a few years down the line, and a very long way to go, and this is being exacerbated by additional challenges. So the resource requirements, they are turning now to development finance institutions to have more money. But this is also at a time when concessional resources are declining, because we have many countries that have been traditional donors facing fiscal challenges, fiscal crisis, and competing demands. We also have the cost of capital itself has risen in the market. So it's very difficult for these development banks, development finance institutions really, to provide the needed support. And they are being asked to do more with less, and to do it faster too. And then the context really, we really need a change in mindset. We need a new orientation. It requires that we have new products, new instruments, new partnerships, new sources of capital that can be scaled up. So this is the challenge that we face. And it's in this context that I think Islamic social finance provides a credible alternative, a means of complementing the limited resources or the resources we have. And we all know that this is basically in the past historically, these awqaf, sadaqah, zakat have played a good role in Muslim countries in supporting health, education, social welfare, and even water supply systems. So if there is some way we can look at modernizing the governance framework, if we can look at ways of really strategically aligning those with modern financial systems, if we can look at ways of scaling them, they are really, there are advantages there. In terms of they are value-driven, they are community-rooted, and they are long-term. They look at things long-term, not short-term. So these are good sources of capital that could be tapped into really to complement the resources that we have, to really scale up finances, to help bridge the financing gap and the challenges that these countries are facing. And I think that that's a possibility.
Thank you, Dr. Mansoor. And I think it's very interesting that, you mentioned about the challenges and the threat to the global order and globalization and the rule-based norms. But I think that you also mentioned the opportunity that creates. And it is a challenge, but it's equally an opportunity to think innovatively, thinking out of the box and bringing together. And part of the beauty of the Awqaf-free zone is it marries this concept of social capital with public and private capital and bringing it together, and then protecting it through the right framework, and then getting it towards food and energy and water security. So I think there is this opportunity, and the need for such innovative instruments is more than ever now evident. So I'm glad that we're moving in that direction, but nonetheless, I think it makes it even more pressing that we think of such ideas and such models. So thank you very much for your insights and your guidance on that. Moving on to Professor Azmi. We talk about capital, we talk about rules and frameworks and legal and regulatory framework, but one of the critical success elements is the human capital part. And as the CEO and president of INCF, INCF has been at the forefront of, Islamic finance education, both not only from an academic point of view, but from a practical, vocational point of view. So when we talk of innovative instruments, it's both in terms of product design, but also implementation. And now the critical mix is that of technology. So where do you see the gaps, and how can those be filled in the human capital element when it comes to conceiving, designing, and delivering innovative products embedded with Islamic finances, Islamic social finance instruments? So what are your thoughts and insights on that, Prof?
For signing the MOU to develop the Awqaf-free zones. Let me go back, take a step backwards to understand the Awqaf-free zone, so that we can then talk about the, the kind of capacity building, the kind of knowledge and qualifications needed. I think if you look at the term Awqaf and Awqaf-free zone, Awqaf refers to certain assets that we put it as permanently, and the returns are used for specific objectives. In the context of most Muslim thinking, Awqaf tend to be cemetery, mosque, the traditional view of Awqaf. But nowadays, we talk about productive Awqaf. We want Awqaf to be productive, meaning that the return are for specific objectives. One example would be, as you mentioned, for food security, for climate adaptation, for education, for health, and so on. Okay? So these are what we call the new thinking, and it is currently being implemented in a couple of countries. The new thinking of the Awqaf. And Awqaf, as we know, is part of the Islamic social finance. So when we look at this Awqaf, the new way of thinking, and the idea when I look at the details of the Awqaf-free zone requires technology. Digitalization of digital tokens, for example, in order to create specific assets, and that can be later on traded. We know for example, in Malaysia and a few other countries, already we have instruments that have been developed. For example, in Malaysia, we have this mutual fund which have AUCA features. You invest in mutual fund, and part of the return you get back as the profit component. The other component is for AUCA features. So which means that you give a specific part of your return for specific objectives of AUCA. Say, for example, if you want on climate adaptation, so that return will be focused on climate adaptation or for food securities and so on. And again, there are many examples that I can show globally, not only in Malaysia. So what we are saying now is that AUCA is no longer a traditional instrument. It is a productive instrument. So to do that, capacity building, human capital is very important. So which means that as a university that have been involved, and we are, established by the Central Bank of Malaysia, our focus is not only to produce Islamic finance expert, but also to focus on Islamic social finance. And that is part and parcel of the Islamic finance today. We talked earlier on, Dr. Sami talked about 4.9 trillion US dollars Islamic finance asset. We have yet to talk about AUCA assets globally. And it's even much more significant, although we do not know the actual amount. So what we are saying is that what kind of talent we need for this kind, apart from the traditional Islamic finance knowledge, we are also producing graduates who are experts in Islamic social finance, in AUCA. Requirement of technology. They require technology, the thinking of technology, the impact measurement. We cannot just talk about producing graduates and X amount of money being given to finance, without talking about impact. And ISDB has been looking at impact measurement. So impact measurement. But as I also took note of the earlier session, system thinking is very important. I think when we look at problems, we have to look from the perspective of systems thinking. So the way at INSEAF we do is that we train people in terms of technology, we bring Islamic finance, we bring Sharia, we bring Islamic social finance, and on top of that, we have problem solving, the system thinking. How do you solve problems? We should be thinking of the solutions to the problem. How do we do that? So the way to do that is, of course, the first is to understand the problem before we actually do it. And at INSEAF, we introduce action-based learning, where we train students to be thinkers, how to solve problems and provide real-world solutions to our students. I think this is the perspective that we're looking at.
Thank you, Prof. And I think that kind of reinforces the direction that the Institute has been taking, moving away from pure research or academic research into more problem solving. And again, I think this systems approach is very important to holistically look at the issues and the challenge and then see whatever needs to be brought to bear, whether it's Islamic finance, it's technology, it's knowledge, it's data analysis, and the new opportunities that they offer. So I think that's a key takeaway, that we need to equip and create the resources, and like NCF is doing, professionals who are not just have a bachelor's or a master's degree in a specific discipline, but who are able to address practical issues and problems and leverage new technology and the cross-cutting things. Let me now come back to the host country, Azerbaijan, and in the context of Islamic finance, the small and medium sector is critically important. And we know that Kobia has been spearheading numerous initiatives, not just in Islamic finance, but also on climate and many of the other issues. Mr. Orhan, we launched the report on Azerbaijan and the prospects of Islamic finance in Azerbaijan with the ITFC. And we know that based on our previous engagement, Kobia has been driving that. And there is enormous opportunity and prospects for Islamic finance. But I would like to hear from your perspective, especially on the SME side, of what are the opportunities and also equally what are the challenges, given that Azerbaijan is now venturing into this area. I know we're working with the central bank on the legal side as well. But from an SME point of view, what do you see as the opportunities and challenges for Islamic finance in Azerbaijan?
Thank you very much for your question. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And it's a great pleasure for me to participate in this panel. Yes, you are right. We are in Azerbaijan. We have a significant opportunity to promote and develop Islamic finance as a complementary component of our local finance system. As in countries' strong business and SME sector strategic position between the Middle East and Central Asia, and of course growing ties between our country and Gulf region countries create for us favorable climate to ensure Islamic finance system. If we take from opportunity perspective, we have several points. First of all is SME financing gap. We know that many SMEs face challenge in accessing finance and especially affordable long-term financing. And Islamic finance instruments such as Murabaha, Musharaka, and Ijara can provide some new opportunities for local and international SMEs which are registered here in Azerbaijan. Second is attracting foreign investment. A well-developed Islamic finance ecosystem could help attract capital, especially from neighboring Gulf region and other Islamic finance markets, particularly for infrastructure projects, for agriculture projects, tourism projects, renewable energy, which is popular now in Azerbaijan, and SME development projects. Then it's financial inclusion. Of course, Islamic finance may appeal to individuals and businesses that prefer, we can say that they prefer Sharia compliant financial services, which is also important, and formal financial sector. Next is alignment with sustainability goals, also for SMEs. The principles of risk sharing, ethical investment, and backed financing are increasingly compatible with ESG and sustainable finance initiatives. And at the several time, I think several challenges need to be addressed. First of all, is a regulatory and legal framework. Further development of legislation, we need to improve it, and we have already some positive developments. The Central Bank of Azerbaijan has created a new regulatory sandbox that allows Islamic finance products to be tested in our market. So it's very important, and as a result, local banks such as Rabita Bank, Azerbaijan International Bank have started offering Islamic banking products in parallel, of course, with support of Islamic Development Bank. So I think it's very important for our financial market. Then market awareness and financial literacy, it's also important because many entrepreneurs and consumers, they are still unfamiliar that what is Islamic finance, because now if we take into consideration the world experience, we see that Islamic finance is not only for Muslim population. So many people from other religions, they use these products in so many countries. Human capital and expertise, and we think that the sector requires trained professionals, especially Sharia scholars, legal experts, and financial institutions with special knowledge. So it's another gap which we can use opportunity and experience of other Islamic countries. And scale and ecosystem development, we think that sustainable growth will require coordinated efforts among all regulators, financial institutions, development partners, government entities, and of course businesses. They all can create complete ecosystem for Islamic finance.
Thank you, Mr. Orhan, and for the very comprehensive assessment of both the challenges and opportunities. And I'm glad that the bank and the institute is working very closely with stakeholders in Azerbaijan. So as I mentioned, we're working to create the legal and regulatory environment in terms of capacity development. We're also looking at the development of the capital market. So some of these issues that you've mentioned, I'm glad that the institute and the bank is proactively working with the stakeholders to address these. So thank you very much for those insights. Let me come back to Mr. Vale for, I think very quickly, now that we have gone through the idea of, this idea of establishing the Awqaf-free zone as a free zone. As someone who's gone through the process, and what advice would you give to us to be mindful of for the free zone? I know you mentioned some of the things based on the Alat experience, but if you were to give us a quick advice on things that we should remain mindful of, what would you advise us?
It's very difficult to give advice to bankers. Usually, we are waiting advices from you, but as I said before, Alat Free Economic Zone, we establish such free economic zone that no free economic zone in surrounding countries can compete with Alat Free Economic Zone. And because it, be sure that each dollar, each manat, which will be invested in the Alat Free Economic Zone, will give a lot of profit, not only for investors, not only for Azerbaijan, but for banks. And because it, my advice, be with us. And very important point where we discussed with Islamic Bank, possibility of investing in outside infrastructure of the Alat Free Economic Zone. Because without connection with motorways, railways, seaways, etc., it will be difficult to develop free economic zone. And in addition to that, connection with national electricity grid, water grid, etc., etc., etc. Be active, be together with us, and we will celebrate our success, joint success. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's about the unique value proposition of what differentiates you, so that, so thank you very much for that. Dr. Mansour, let me come back to you now to wear your Bank of Industry hat. The Bank of Industry is playing a critical role in terms of the industrialization of the micro and SME sector in Nigeria. But I would like to ask you from the angle of how the partnership works with development financial institutions and multilateral institutions, and how can that translate into tangible industrial assets, and looking at food and energy security within perhaps the Nigerian context of the role Bank of Industry is playing, and what collaboration opportunities do you see between DFIs and multilaterals? Because previously we focused more on banking and capital markets, but the development financial institution like BOI is a critical player that somehow has not been, I think, the opportunities have not fully been exploited. So what do you think in terms of the collaboration between multilateral development institutions like the IDB and Bank of Industry?
Well, there is a lot that could be done really to exploit synergies and complementarities. The national development banks like the Bank of Industry, of course, have local knowledge and expertise, and they're locally connected with the SMEs, which makes it very difficult for DFIs like Islamic Development Bank, African Development Bank to reach out directly to. So that, in essence, would be good intermediaries in terms of channeling capital, enabling us to scale up our operations. And but I think there's also other dimensions to it in terms of the capacity development, particularly in respect of the Bank of Industry. We've recently set up a non-interest banking window, along with other DFIs in Nigeria, Nexim, etc. Now, this is a relative new area for many of these development finance institutions, and they're relying heavily, and thank goodness we have the ISDBI stepping in to provide needed technical assistance and capacity development support to help build our ability and strengthen our ability to deliver in that area. But beyond that also, there are possibilities for providing de-risking arrangements. For example, we have ISEC. We've been working with ISEC basically in our efforts to raise money in the capital markets, and basically using the guarantees that have been provided, we've been able to access, we hope we'll be able to access the capital markets and get better prices. So there are lots of possibilities really for this kind of partnership. In the area of blended finance also, we are looking to encourage ICD participation in joint projects in terms of making a contribution, and sometimes even equity. There have been ongoing discussions to see where they could contribute. So I think it's a mutually beneficial partnership that allows these big multilateral development finances. We have similar arrangements with IFC, for example. We're having a discussion with them. We have lines of financing from African Development Bank that allow us to really scale up our operations. So these kinds of arrangements are mutually beneficial to both institutions, but most importantly, they enable us to serve the clients, the primary clients, better. They enable better outreach to these clients and better monitoring and support in terms of being closer to the ground to be able to follow up on these projects.
Thank you, Dr. Mansour. So I think that kind of reconfirms the idea that I think this new area of collaboration between DFIs and multilaterals is very promising, especially given the local knowledge and expertise and leveraging the expertise of the multilateral to bring to bear in the development of the local country. Because I think compared to commercial banks and other financial institutions, the mandates seem to be more aligned to and geared towards development. So I think there's a natural partnership that exists there. Quickly moving on to Prof. We talked about the awqaf-free zones and the human capital requirement, but in terms of, we feel that still the Islamic finance, social finance does not seem as well integrated within the broader financial system when it comes to Islamic finance. So how do you see greater integration between Islamic social finance within financial institutions and how it can be drive inclusive growth? So
thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the overall development of Islamic finance, it started with providing alternative to Muslims, pure commercial Islamic finance. I think for the last maybe 10, 15 years, I think there's a significant growth of Islamic social finance, the like of zakat, awqaf, sadaqah, Islamic microfinance based on Khadu Hassan. But they operate in parallel, which means that they do not talk to each other. One reason is because they have different regulators. You have banking, capital market regulators, and you have the zakat, awqaf, different regulators. In certain countries, it's the religious authorities. But I can give you also a number of examples where countries in Southeast Asia are able to integrate the social finance with commercial finance successfully. We can look from the perspective of banking, and then we can look at takaful, we can look at capital market. And I can give you specific examples. For example, if we take the case of banking, first, the Deputy Governor, Adnan, mentioned earlier on about value-based intermediation in Malaysia. Value-based intermediation is simply focusing on impact of Islamic social finance, impact of Islamic finance. So how it is done? We are financing the micro entrepreneurs or the small entrepreneurs. And one of the key things they need is equipment. So how do we finance that equipment? The usage of awqaf, waqaf comes in to provide that equipment. Secondly, for capital, seed capital, zakat is used in Malaysia for seed capital for the micro entrepreneurs. That's another example. Zakat can also be used for capacity building. We know that it's very important for small and micro entrepreneurs need the right capacity, the right knowledge and training. So zakat is also used in Malaysia for capacity building. So now we have the usage of zakat, awqaf in banking. So this is done in banks because banks are providing financing to the micro and small entrepreneurs. So this is an example. Another example is where we look at zakat can also be used for profit margin subsidy, which means that once you provide financing, the poor may not be able, the micro may not be able to pay in full. So that component of profit margin can be used from zakat. That's a specific example that has been used successfully in Malaysia. For example, in 2020, we start with 40 people. Now, 14,000 micro entrepreneurs enjoy that kind of facilities. And it can be expanded further. So that's in the context of banking. Second one is in the context of takaful. For takaful, the one of the key things for food security is what we need to have is takaful crop. So zakat is used for those takaful, for crops, for weather takaful. So because they are eligible in the first place. Of course, we can talk about the categories of stuff and so on. These are all taken care of. So zakat is being used. Another good example, very successful in Malaysia, is the paddy farming. Because paddy farming requires many equipments and so on. The rice mill is funded from awqaf. The poor farmers who till the land to grow the paddy is given every month funding from zakat. So, creative. And these zakat are given by banks because banks have to pay zakat. Those are some of the creative things that are being done. Then if we go into the capital market, we have examples in Indonesia, the cash wakaf link suku, which got the award from ISDB. Yes. So imagine using wakaf in capital market, wakaf instrument. And this is what you're going to do in the awqaf-free zone as well. You're going into technology, creating tokens, digital tokens. So that's another example. So if we are creative, systems thinking, digital-based, then we are able to create new instruments, as we mentioned earlier on, to solve problems that are faced by Muslims. Okay? So let's not restrict ourselves into thinking zakat, awqaf is only for specific things. I think that's the message that we want to show. And we have examples in many countries, and these examples can be shared, with member countries in terms of how do we go about rolling these instruments. And these are specific, successful case studies that can be learned from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you particularly for highlighting specific examples of your social finance instruments were integrated into normal financial institution instruments to enhance their effectiveness.
Sorry, if I can add a bit more.
Sure.
Once you have this, one of the key things that you need to have proper regulations and governance. And this is where, for example, if you do in the Labuan, you already have the proper governance, the proper regulation, Labuan Foundation Act, the Labuan Islamic Financial Services Act. All these acts are already available. That gives you trust and reporting.
Thank you, Prof. This is very useful in terms of the practical examples, and I think there's much to learn from the Malaysian experience. Now back to Brother Orhan. I think we talked about all these instruments ultimately towards food and energy security, and I know that COBIA has also been very instrumental, especially following the launch of the Baku Climate Coalition for SMEs Green Transition. It looks at how SMEs can move towards more environmentally responsible financing and operations. So how do you think the SMEs can contribute to a more sustainable and resilient food and energy security systems based on your spearheading of the coalition?
I think that, of course, micro, small, and medium enterprises are essential to building climate resilient food and energy ecosystem, and they can adopt climate smart agriculture. It can be possible, reduce food waste, and improve energy efficiency. And of course, invest in renewable energy solutions, which it can be also important for them. And of course, their success depends on strong partnership between SMEs, between them and maybe big companies, and of course government, financial institutions, banks, international organizations, technology providers, and members of private sector. Of course, we know that, and we need to be clear that micro, small, and medium enterprises, they cannot make this transition alone, because it's very important for them. And they, as I told, they need strong access to finance. Also, they need technology skills and markets. That's why this partnership, especially with government entities, it's very important for them. Government, I think government institutes, ministries, bodies, they need to create a favorable climate for them. They need to create right policy and right policy environment, how they can develop this. Financial institutions also need to provide accessible green finance solution, which is also important. And as I mentioned, big and large companies, they can help them by integrated SMEs into sustainable supply chains. And international organizations, which is also they can be important. They can contribute expertise, technical assistance, and capacity building for them. The Baku Climate Coalition, which I want to mention, which we launched in COP29, Baku Climate Coalition for SMEs Green Transition, provides an important platform to bring these stakeholders together, mobilize green finance, help SMEs, and share expertise between them, and help SMEs for sustainable challenge into opportunities for growth and resilience. So this is the main thing which can be useful and can help SMEs in this case, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Orhan. So I think we're almost out of time. So I think one last point that I would like to make, which is very important, because we have these panel discussions and we have conferences. And one of the things people always ask is that, you know, there's great ideas, great discussion, but what's the impact? What's real? I think the difference in this case is that, you see, what the Institute has done is that it's taken these great ideas and then put them to use. So for the Awqaf-free zone, we're now at a juncture where we have completed, with our partner IRM, we're sitting in the audience, a set of feasibility studies looking at the legal and regulatory and financial and operational aspects. So the feasibility studies are complete. In addition to that, as you saw this morning, we're very proud to sign the MOU with Labuan Free Zone for the Financial Services Authority for the piloting of the project. So it's not just, you know, all these good ideas, you know, the insights we got from Elat, you know, the insights we got from the other panelists of how to combine instruments of social finance with modern technology and gear them towards humanity's most pressing problems, such as food and energy security. So these are not just ideas and discussions, but this is something that the Institute is putting together as a solution and is going to implement and pilot and test. So in that sense, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you everyone for their valuable contribution. I was thinking of doing a round of another question, but I think we're running out of time. But I think it was a rich discussion from a diverse and very distinguished group of panelists. But rest assured, and this is for the audience, that these are not just ideas. We believe in taking these ideas, converting them into solutions, piloting them, and then offering them as a sustainable solution for that. So with that, I would like to thank you, all of you, for your great participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our moderator and distinguished speakers for their expertise and valuable perspectives. May I kindly invite all speakers for their group photo. And also, may I invite Dr. Sami Al-Suwailaim to present tokens of appreciation to our distinguished panelists.
Thank you for your advice. Very important.
Dear participants, should you have any questions regarding the topics discussed during this session, please feel free to send them to the email address displayed on the screen. The team will be pleased to respond and to continue the conversation beyond the forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll still continue our forum. May I ask you to return to your seats? Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our forum. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may continue. Ladies and gentlemen, knowledge remains one of the most powerful drivers of the development. The ISDB Institute is a leading authority in Islamic economics and finance, publishing with a portfolio of more than 500 publications to date. This morning, we launched 2 new reports produced by the ISDBI and strategic partners. Now we would like to present 3 additional publications from ISDBI. The first one is a new book titled Essential of Islamic Finance, authored by Dr. Sami Al-Suwailaim. The book provides in-depth analysis of the foundational principles of Islamic finance and their relevance to addressing contemporary global economic challenges. Another new publication is titled Sukuk Enhancement Fund, jointly produced by the ISDBI and Asian Development Institute. This study is proposing the Sukuk Enhancement Fund as an innovative mechanism designed to improve the risk profile of Sukuk and expand access to capital markets, particularly SME. We also have the annual report of ISDBI for year 2025. The annual report highlights the major achievements of the Institute in the key functional areas, including Islamic financial industry transformation, capacity building, innovative fintech solution, and knowledge dissemination. You can download them on ISDBI website. Ladies and gentlemen, innovation and technology are increasingly shaping the future of Islamic finance. The ISDBI Applied AI in Islamic Finance Competency Challenge is a 3-day capacity building program and innovation competition organized by the Islamic Development Bank Institute. The program combines learning, mentorship, competition, guiding participants to develop concept-level AI solutions that align with Sharia principles and ethical standards, while addressing practical challenges and supporting sustainable development. Today, we are pleased to recognize the outstanding teams whose innovative ideas demonstrated excellence, creativity, and practical impact. Ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly invite Dr. Sami Al-Suweleim to join us on stage to present the trophies to the winners. We will begin with the third place winner. So, the third place goes to Elchin Hussein, Ming Platform. Congratulations. Also, if I may request you to stay on the stage for the group photo. Congratulations. Our second place winner is Halil bin Mohammed of Aish. Mr. Halil is unable to join us today, so please join me to congratulate his outstanding achievement. And now our first place winner. First place goes to Emin Jafar of Alipay. Congratulations. Once again, our sincere congratulations to all our winners. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude our ISDB Forum on Islamic Finance, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to all speakers, moderators, panelists, and participants for their valuable contribution. Thank you for your active participation and engagement. We look forward to continue this important conversation and collaborations in years ahead. May I now invite all organizers, distinguished guests, and participants to join us on the stage for the group final photo.
Next.